Enlighten us.
That guy's awesome. I'll give Matt a hand, please. Just really thankful for this opportunity. You know, it's truly incredible to be in the midst of everyone. You're an incredible group. You know, last night, just having the opportunity to sit there and watch people, some who've never met before, you know, acting like you're just meeting up again, and you'll meet up again and again. It's truly heartwarming to listen to the presentations yesterday and the ones that we heard today, and to listen to the thought that's been put into them and the love and the passion that you have for what you do. You know, it's not an easy road that we're traveling right now. Sport is probably at its most controversial time in the tenure of a lot of us. Some of you are not as old as I am, but I can certainly say that I've never seen a time where sport has been so politicized, it's been questioned, it's been abandoned. And so it makes our work even more important. And so I know that we have a lot of business to do today, and we have a fabulous second day on tap, so I just wrote a few things. I'm going to be short. I'm going to sit down. I'll probably get up. But I just want to share some thoughts. What an incredible time to be a social worker with a passion for sports. At a time when our country continues to use sports, as it has for over 100 years, as a community organizing and social capital building tool. But it's also a time when sport has become a calculator for divisiveness. It is still a great time to be a sports social worker, and I want to briefly and I hope to achieve some brevity. I want to talk to you about a couple of critical issues about where we should go as sports social workers and about where we should go as an organization. But first, I want to be explicit about what we have accomplished. One special issue, the first ever in the Journal of Issues in Intercollegiate Sports. 2 of our members serve on NCAA advisory boards. We've conducted 3 advocacy campaigns for the NFL, for our female professional athletes, and for secondary school athletes. 5 of our members recently earned, and I underscore earned, employment in Division I athletics. We are pushing now 160 members, and our website has thousands and thousands of hits. Athletes are a vulnerable population, and we must continue to push high school athletic associations, colleges and universities, minor and professional leagues to discuss the issues, provide the services, and equally as important, evaluate how their investment will pay dividends on and off the field. It's a critical time for us because athletes now are coming out about their mental health. Whether it's the QB at BYU or a former UT women's basketball star turned professional, we are slowly normalizing the reality that mental health disorders can be normal. Secondly, we must piggyback on the labor of athletes at all levels and engage in the practice of social justice, as Ginger reminded us yesterday. It is one of our fundamental ideas, but it's probably one of the most difficult things to grasp. Sports is constantly changing our United States, even in the midst of controversy. Kaepernick, Bennett, Lynch, Long, James, Popovich, Rapone, have forced us to leave our comfort zones and reconsider, if only on game days, the other 99% of our population and the oppression and injustice that plague our country every second of every day. Male and female athletes from the pros to the pony leagues have started, and in my case, changed some of people's perspective on key social issues. Lauren can attest to the reality that when all this kneeling business began, I steadfastly believed that Cap had the right to kneel anytime he wanted to. But over the course of the last year, I've broadened my conceptual definition of disrespect, gained new insight into the freedoms that I enjoy, and recalibrated my focus and understand that all lives matter. While I believe what the league has done to Cap is wrong, I also accept that athletes can find a way to raise awareness and injustice without disrespecting others. But what a great lesson this has been for our country and for our profession. On the youth sports level, the scandal at Louisville says a lot depending on who you listen to. Young people and their families are identified at an early age and forever changed by sports. It's hard to say who is the victim in the Louisville situation. But at the end of the day, at least one young man, and maybe scores more, won't be able to pursue their dreams on the court and in the classroom because of decisions made by adults. Let me be really clear about this. Youth sports, social work in youth sports, is truly our frontline issue. It may not be as glamorous as college and professional sports, but it's probably the most important that we have. What must social workers do moving forward? Well, first, I truly believe that in the next 2 or 3 years, we will reach a time, and dig this, where this specialty that we call sports social work will become increasingly specialized. By that, I mean there's plenty of need for therapists on almost every sports team at almost every level. But we will soon need subspecialties, including sports social work program development personnel, sport social work outcomes researchers, and individuals who specialize in sport social work and gerontology. Second, our BSW and MSW students have to get in the game. We have several students in the audience today, and I have a special play call for you. This social work specialty in the sports realm is not for the faint of heart on several levels. First, it's one of the hardest social work specializations to break into. When people first hear about sports social work, they say, "Oh, I never heard of that." But when they experience how hard it is to land a field placement or a job, they probably think, "I wish I never heard of that." But stay the course if you're passionate about it. In the words of one of my favorites, the late Jimmy Valvano, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Secondly, once you get in the door, you will see why this is more than just a notion. When speaking with Charlotte yesterday, she shared that one of the many reasons she was hired at the University of Georgia is because sports social workers can work across systems. And Charlotte named 5 systems without even broaching the ones outside of athletics and outside the university. Sports social work can be one of the most complex social work specialties that we have. Third, and this is very important, as we move forward as clinicians, scholars, and educators, we must remember the strength-based and asset-based approach. I can recall when Matt Ginger and I traveled to Alabama, which is by far one of the most beautiful college spaces I've ever seen. And one of the folks in the audience came up and said, "You know, there are some good things about sports." And they were right. And I heard it again yesterday. And our NAS colleague was right, that 90 to 95% and probably more of everything associated with sports is good to great. The benefits to those who play, to those who watch sports, to those who work in sports are beyond measure. Whether it is a story of vets who fought for our freedom only to lose some of their physical capacities but overcame those challenges through sports, or the family who testifies that one of the few times there is peace in their home is when a sporting event is on, or whether it is the young man who graduated next to last in his high school class and goes on to get his PhD to lead a group of sports social workers and never would have had the opportunity because he only went to go to college to play baseball. Sport is great. We as an association have to improve our balance beam routine, gender, and make sure that we give more airtime to the positive aspects of sport and athletes as well as sporting families and communities. Thank you, J.J. Watt. What we must do moving forward. In addition to the general thoughts above, here are some things that I hope that you will consider. First, I always say that people who work in sports are just as competitive as the athletes they work with. And that holds true for sports social workers, whether you're a clinician, a researcher, or an educator. With that said, please hear me. Let's not convene over the next couple of days or for the rest of this time that we have here and not lean on each other when we return to our workplace. Let's not compete with one another. Please don't try and go out there and get the triple-double every night. Social workers are versed in teamwork, multidisciplinary work, and we work well with systems. What I'm trying to communicate to you is that it is my prayer that everyone in this room will form a working relationship with at least one person that they did not know and work together. Not just because of the immense expertise in this room and not because it's efficient, but because it's the way that social workers do things. We do things together. We all want to be the MVP. We all want championships. Those are important, but they're not one alone. I was so happy to see when the College Sports Committee, when Danny and Lauren and Zach and Charlotte got together and put together a poster. We need more collaborations on articles, presentations, posters, books, and programming. Let's stake our claim in the sports world together. Sports social workers must, like Magic Johnson, make those around us better. Secondly, and more specifically, we have to achieve higher level service goals. Please get involved in NASWIS if you're not already. We really need your help. I hope that you understand, and this is so very important, I hope that you understand that in serving this organization, it's not just about the organization, but it's about you. Had we not come together, I would argue that we would not see the individuals that are earning positions now in Division I sports and high school sports. I would argue that we contribute to that. What I'm saying is that if you serve this organization, then that gives us the opportunity to spread the word to the professional leagues, to the amateur leagues, to the high school association about the utility of sports social work. And once we spread the word and they understand what we do, then guess who they're going to come and ask, where can we find one of those sports social workers? NASWIS. And guess who we're going to direct them to? All of you. So when you're serving our organization, you're not serving it in a vacuum. You're serving it for a purpose. And the evidence is throughout this room, ladies and gentlemen. I want to close by saying that I'm thankful for this day and for each of you being here because it speaks to the reality that social work matters. It matters. The movement matters. It's not something that we take for granted. While I'm honored to help lead this effort, I'm indebted to Cindy, Ginger, Matt, Tamika, Kim, Kelly, and our sponsors for their investment, because it has allowed us to thrive these 2 days together. I'm thankful to all of you that serve on the College Sports Committee, the Pro Sports Committee, Youth Sports Committee, the Research Committee, and coming soon, the International Sports Committee. I'm thankful to all of you. But before I close, a little self-disclosure. There are times, despite what I've helped the executive team and NASWIS to achieve, that I'm sad. Because I observe that so-and-so is working on this and so-and-so is on television and what's their name was on an incredible panel and they got that consulting job. And sometimes I want more of those opportunities. But then a student emails me sharing that they heard about our work at the Alliance, or someone in the Alliance texts me to share that they're up for a job, or a Google citation alert pops up because someone cited the first ever Sport Social Work edition, or I hear that someone who was in IAL is now about to earn their MSW. And my favorite, I never thought about combining social work and sports. This is all to say that I've learned that I don't need to be sad anymore, because when our members succeed, I succeed. And I think that that brings me the greatest pleasure of all. Albeit these moments are brief, I am so very thankful that our Lord and Savior provided me with the grace to make a difference in this world and to lead this incredible group of people. And it's days like these last 2 or 3 that fuel me and make me feel, along with sharing my life with that incredible lady back there, that I'm the luckiest man in the world. To be a part of this means so much to a kid who just went to college to play baseball could ever imagine. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. Moreover, I'm incredibly thankful for all of the positive affirmations. Your words to me are like caramel M&Ms about my role in this work and the work that we have accomplished as a team. I'm truly excited about what comes next, because, in the words of someone I won't mention, it's going to be great. I want to thank you, and most of all, I want you to enjoy this rest of the day together. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to the first of the interactive workshop session. So there is a presentation in here by Amy Cox and Sam Ellis, and then Dr. Gill is across the hall for his presentation. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to move while we get the room set up, and then we'll get rolling.
I did plenty of that.
I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll be back.
You just set up.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Did you? That, you know, that's what you hope.
No, she's actually one of my students. Did she? She's one of my students. Fantastic.
Yeah, she did a great job on her poster yesterday. She doesn't know if we're going to she would have guessed it. We got new ones, but I didn't. So they are, we're going to do it again. They don't know it. All right, let's get your presentation. I'll do a quick little introduction so that everybody knows who's here, what we're talking about, and we'll go from there. You're welcome.
Yeah, and I labeled them.
Wait, Sam's back up.
I did, and then I moved to Montgomery. Okay, that's why.
Well, yeah, and I also really don't.
Great.
Attention.
Alright, so I'll go ahead and do a quick little introduction of our next set of speakers who are going to be presenting athletes and eating disorders, biopsychosocial impacts. So we are excited to welcome from Troy University, still living off the high of beating Louisiana State University in football not too long ago. Really, that's what they care most about. I mean, they're here for the presentation, but in their head, they're thinking about that victory.
It was a really good one.
It was, I'll tell you, I watched the last quarter of it. Like, the score didn't even do it justice. I mean, they just beat that. Like, LSU got a couple of fourth quarter touchdowns that were like, it didn't even matter. So it could have been a 30-point lopsided victory. They played well, although they turned around the next week and lost, didn't they? So we won't talk about that. We'll focus on our eating disorder. So straight for Troy University, though, Samantha Ellis and Amy Cox. So have at it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you guys haven't, go get a chocolate chip cookie in the back. I'm serious.
It's really good.
like the best thing will ever happen to your life. So I'm Samantha. This is Amy, and we're both instructors at Troy University, and we're obtaining our PhDs in sports and fitness management. And so we are no means experts in sports, but we've started to kind of look into sports and things like that. So that's kind of where this came from. We are both social workers, been practicing social work, and we teach social work at Troy. So I just like to always say that self-disclosure. If you guys have any information that we don't have up here, just interject. Raise your hand, stand up, say whatever you'd like. So that way I don't want to ever think you guys think that we think we're experts. We're just here. We got some information, and we're really excited. So we can get started. Do you have the clicker?
I do.
Oh, no. Does it work?
I have the clicker.
Okay, here's our objectives. We're going to define eating disorders, DSM-5, genetics, we'll do social and environmental factors, we'll look at psychological warning signs and symptoms, and we'll do some treatment overview, just a few small tidbits of each information, okay? Who is impacted? So who do we look at and be like, oh, they have an eating disorder? I know we all have in our minds, like, this person looks like they have an eating disorder because they're thin, or even now we look at people that are heavily overweight, we're like, oh, they have a binge eating disorder. But females and males, anyone, any age group. I was at my 4-year-old does gymnastics, and so all of those girls were like in there, and they were probably 10 years old, but they were worried about what they were eating because of gymnastics. And I was like, that made me nervous because I was like, oh my goodness, a 10-year-old are talking about, well, I shouldn't eat that because I can't fit in my gymnastics uniform, or my coach says, and I'm like, you're 10. How do you know anything about that? And so I always look at where any age group can be affected by eating disorders. Athletes from any sports. I know a lot of times we think, oh my goodness, only, runners or swimmers or gymnasts have eating disorders, but let's look at football players, sumo wrestlers, things of that nature. And so everybody, basketball players, anybody can have an eating disorder. So I think that's always important that we look at that too. Athletes have higher rates of eating disorders than non-athletes. We found there's still some controversial studies about that, but the information that we have is that they do have higher rates of eating disorders, but it's harder to say this is an actual eating disorder because they're like, well, it's for performance. I mean, think about wrestlers and boxers, they're trying to lose the weight, and so it's hard to say, is there a category for that? And I know, is there a category for putting someone in, well, I can't eat this week, but next week I ate, 10,000 calories in one day. I think about Michael Phelps. He said he eats like 30,000 calories a day when he's training. And so but then when he's not training, he's eating regular. So could that be considered binge eating? Things of that nature. So, and here we go, we have pictures. And who has an eating disorder? Anybody? What do you guys think?
Can you look at someone and tell?
No.
sumo wrestler is my favorite. Like I,
She
just,
made
I,
it-
I know
she made it add that
I
one.
made her put the sumo wrestler on there. I was like, I love this. But you know, so traditionally we'd be like, oh my gosh, this girl right here, she has an eating disorder. You know, traditionally that's what we say. But Eddie Lacy, I know all this stuff in the news about him. I mean, think about that. So we always look at traditionally, these people have eating disorders, and so we have to take it one step further.
But then you also think, then you might miss, if you have this preconceived notion in your head of what an eating disorder looks like, you might miss where there actually is an eating disorder. So what is an eating disorder? They've got different changes between the DSM-4 and DSM-5, which we'll look at, but eating disorder is just categorized by continuous disruptions of eating-related behaviors that results in the absorption or consumption that damages a person's physical health and also psychosocial functioning. And with that, so we know that athletes use their body to perform. So we push it to a lot of limits. You want to be competitive. You want to be in your best mode of physical being. And so practice and training, those are important. And they're needed and they're necessary. And to do that, that's what you feel like, okay, we got to do this to be able to get to that positive change or that win. But nutrition and eating are also a part of that. It's all together. And a lot of times we talk about also leaving out the mental aspects, you know, that they can play on you. So an athlete's body, weight, and composition are pivotal determinants of performance in many sport disciplines. So we're going to look at some of those. Not only, that's what we're talking about, a biopsychosocial approach. It's not just the physical, but also the social and the psychological impacts, because, you know, we look at treating holistically. We want to look at treating the whole person. So here we're not going to go over, for our presentation, we're really just going to go over anorexia, bulimia, but these are what in the DSM-5 are eating disorders. So you've got PICA, you've got rumination, avoidant, anorexia, binge eating now in the DSM-5. Of course, you've got your other specified and then the unspecified. So there's a lot of different things that fall under the categories of eating disorders.
And a lot of the information that we looked at, the unspecified feeding and eating disorders, is kind of the new push of what we looked at with athletes. Of course, the bulimia and the anorexia, but we've also looked at the unspecified. So I was teaching an assessment psychopathology class, and I was like, gosh, the DSM-5 has unspecified for everything. And I was like, that. And it kind of made me nervous at first, because I was like, well, wait, that could be anything. And so I think that's important, though, because sometimes we don't have people that fit exactly in a category. And so I think that's the justice that the DSM-5 has done, is like, okay, you don't exactly fit, but you kind of fit, so let's work on it. And so if the treatment works, and I would say this, if the treatment works and the medication works, that's what's important. And so, yes, we want a diagnosis because that's what we need to have, but also it's the treatment, and the diagnosis is secondary, and some people will disagree with that, but if the treatment and the medication works, that's what our main goal is. And so I think that that's important for us to look at, because the unspecified, that's why I tell my students, I'm like, yes, if they have some of the criteria but not all of it, look at that, look at it further. And so I love that about the DSM-5. It made me nervous at first, but I love it now. So.
Well, and with the changes in the DSM-4 to the DSM-5, like I said, the binge eating disorder was officially recognized, and so that has been added. But also, they expanded some of the anorexia and bulimia disorders that previously were not there, because then they did fall into that not otherwise specified. So by increasing those criteria, we were able to put more people under that diagnosis, which then fast tracks treatment. So you're like, okay, they fall into this, and one of them was that the menstruations would no longer, or lack of menstruations would no longer be required where it was previously for a diagnosis. So it was like, oh, you don't have, that aspect, so you can't be diagnosed with that, and then there wouldn't be the treatments to follow. So with anorexia nervosa, we're talking about for DSM-5, that is a restriction of energy intake, which leads to, this is the key thing, a significantly low body weight. They didn't necessarily they did talk about BMIs, but as far as a weight, because everybody's different, their physical, you know, bone structure, muscle, all of those is different. So you can't necessarily go on a weight, but what you can do is by the height weight chart is what is significantly lower than normal. Also, what goes along with that ties is their intense fear